to take a seat, the chair by the microphone, and once you push the button, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Mahatma Gandhi said that the true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. Our children, especially those from difficult backgrounds, are some of our most vulnerable, and we believe that they deserve a safe and loving environment in which to develop and grow. That is what we're looking to create here, and why we want to return this property to a care home once again. This is a quiet residential area conducive for development of young people away from the challenging environments of their past. It also gives them plenty of space with large bedrooms, generously sized living areas and outdoor spaces in which to grow and thrive. We believe the property is well suited to this purpose, that the impact on the local area will be minimal, and that it will provide an excellent home for a small number of children in a caring and well-managed setting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our second speaker, member of the public speaking against the application, Mr. Anthony Cannon. Mr. Cannon, when you take a seat, there's a button in the middle there. When you're ready, you have 3 minutes. Actually, you've just turned it off, but hit it again, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. My name is Anthony Cannon, and I am speaking as objector to this application. I respectfully ask you to refuse this application, or at the very least defer it, until all the relevant safeguarding evidence has been obtained and properly considered. The application is not simply about changing the use of a property. It is about whether this is an appropriate location for a children's home accommodating up to 5 children and young people aged 8 to 17 with emotional and behavioural challenges. That places a significant responsibility on this committee to be both satisfied that the proposals and the location are appropriate. With respect, I do not believe the evidence before you enables you to reach that conclusion. I note the recent consultation from Essex County Council Adult Social Care. I welcome the fact that the applicant attended one of the council's children's residential drop-in sessions, and that the adult social care considers a small home of this scale to be broadly consistent with its preferred model of provision. However, members, that is not an endorsement of this planning application or this particular location. Adult social care comments on the model of care. It does not conclude that 29 Ordinary Gardens is a suitable site for vulnerable children with emotional and behavioural challenges, nor does it state that Essex County Council needs this particular home or intends to commission placements there. Those are important distinctions. The officer's report relies heavily on staffing levels, management plans, CCTV, security arrangements, and liaison with external agencies. While these measures may all be commendable, they are designed to manage risk. They do not remove the risk created by the location itself. The planning question before you is not whether the applicant is well-intentioned, it is whether this is the right place for this type of development. The property is situated close to the seafront, surrounded and lies within easy walking distance of Clacton Town Centre, where there are numerous licensed premises and where Essex Police have undertaken repeated operations against organised drug dealing and criminal activity. Children and young people who have experienced trauma or emotional and behavioural challenges are recognised as being at greater risk of criminal exploitation. Those characteristics of the location cannot be changed by management policy or good intentions. Adult Social Care also advises there are already 12 registered children homes providing 42 registered beds within the district, and that no tendering children are currently placed in mainstream residential homes in the area. Yet the applicant's needs statement repeatedly suggests that this proposal directly meets Essex County Council's current need and will help reduce out-of-area placements. That is not what Adult Social Care is saying.
3 minutes. Can you stop now? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cotton.
Thank you, Chair.
The final speaker on this item is the ward member, Councillor Sue Honeywood. Councillor Honeywood, if you'd like to take a seat, and as the ward member, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Residents describe the garden area as being a quiet, established residential area which is ideally suited for its elderly population. This council has recognised this in its local plan under the Protected Places section, saying it is the area of special character, going on to say that it is important that the Arcadian character of this area is preserved. Policy PPL 12 has been specifically introduced to ensure that this special character is safeguarded. It says commercial uses, including private hotels, guest houses and offices, will not normally be considered appropriate. It clearly states commercial uses including, this means including, but not restricted to. It is not an exhausted list. This application, employing 15 members of staff, is clearly for a commercial enterprise and should be treated as such when making a judgment on this application. The report of the Corporate Director of Planning and Community downplays the commercial aspect of this application, arguing that the small scale of the use excludes it from this policy. If there were parameters on scale, they would have been included in the policy. They have been. This isn't a not-for-profit organisation, it's a commercial enterprise. The report also says that the previous use of the residential home for the elderly sets a precedent that allows this application. However, the use of this property as a care home is shown to have ended in October 2013. More than 12 years before Section 2 of the local plan, which includes policy PPL 12, was adopted by this council in January 2022. In addition, residential homes for the elderly do not have a noise and antisocial behaviour mitigation plan, a missing child protocol and police liaison strategy, or a good neighbour and community engagement plan, which this application appears to have. There is no comparison. Furthermore, this council agreed to my call for the gardens to be covered by the Public Space Protection Order, again showing the council's commitment to the special character of the area. In conclusion, policy PP12 states that within the garden area of East Clacton, new development shall have particular regard to the special character and appearance of this area. I'm asking that you have particular regard for the area and interpret the policy as written, and as I believe it was intended by our councillor colleagues, and refuse this application.
Thank you, Councillor Honeywood. Before we go to questions, I'll just go to our officer. Was there anything that was mentioned by the speakers that you'd like to come back on? Mr. Pateman-G.
Thank you. Just a couple of things within what was said. I would just like to point out to members that need is not a material planning consideration. Just to remind them of that. Planning history is a material consideration. I'd also just like to point out that the proposal before you is for C2. C2 in terms of children's home. That's a generic C2 children's home. There's no specific circumstances of, how do I describe this carefully? in terms of who those children might be. Those children may come from any background of any kind. It is simply a children's home. That is what's before you in respect of that generic use class. Just to be clear on that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pateman G. So, questions for our officer? Councillor Sudra.
Thank you, Chair. I've just read on the Essex County Council Adult Social Care paragraph, says the children placed in the home would have emotional and behavioural difficulties. So is that just a wider definition?
They might not. Ultimately, the planning position is that this is a children's home. Who, as in the children, might be housed within this could be from any background, any circumstances, emotional or otherwise. This is not, though, to be pointed out, that this is not a C2A use, which is a secured residential institution. That is something different. This is a generic children's home.
Sorry, Chair, just one more question. Then following up from that, would the same children that would qualify for this type of home be qualified for fostering, for instance?
Not quite. Fostering can fall within C3, which is what its current use is. So if this was a large fostering home, it wouldn't need planning permission.
Thank you.
Any further questions, members? Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. As you have mentioned in the past, I'm very much in favour of these kind of applications, and we certainly need these kind of homes and support to children who are looking to derive that. But there are questions here, Chair, which I have quite a few of. So I'm happy to break it down in tranches. If you so desire, you direct me if you may. Right. I'd like to know about the PSPO, all of that's on there. Am I right in saying, did I pick that up right? It was section 2 of the local plan. 2022, is that correct?
So in terms of the planning history, sorry, I didn't quite understand the question. Could you repeat the question for me? Could you repeat the question for me? I didn't quite catch it all.
It is ready. Sorry, it's playing up. The PSPO that is on that in the gardens right now. Could you tell me when that was placed, when it was put in place? Because attached to that is an area of St. James near the church, which St. James Church. Could you tell me what year that was put in place?
I think we might be referring to the public space protection. Right, the public space protection order. Yes. Right. I don't know when that was specifically put in place. It is not. It doesn't sit within the planning regime, so it's a separate matter.
Anyhow, we'll move on from that then. But there is one in place at this moment. But we heard that history is a part of the planning condition, and that's pertinent to. The building was at one time in use as an old folks' home, a park, you can call it that if you so wish. But that was some 12 years before this order was put in place. And I don't see how 12 years of history as going to affect this now?
So you hear me say this often. It's for the decision maker to consider what weight to apply to different material considerations. Planning history, as far back as 1948, is a material planning consideration. How much weight you give that planning history and the various uses this site has gone through is for you to consider, and how much that makes a bearing on your decision is up to you. However, as officers, we have pointed out that 12 years ago, which we don't consider to be a significantly long time, this was a C2 use, be it a care home as opposed to a children's home. And we do feel that if we were to present ourselves at an appeal, should this application be refused, we would be arguing against that planning history to a planning inspectorate. So we feel we've given it due weight. How much weight you give it as the decision maker is ultimately up to you.
That was interesting. Thank you. Chair, if I may? Okay, thank you. We done the site visit, and I was very impressed with what I saw. It's a beautiful building, there's no two ways about that. And as you are fully aware that I have experience of this kind of child care, and a member of my family works full-time in there today. So I was looking at this from maybe a different angle. We are talking about education. There's going to be up to 5 children, and they have to be educated. Will they be educated in-house, a school being provided, or do they go out to local schools?
I am not aware that they would be educated at home or at this home. They may well be educated at home, as children can be, or they may be educated in a local school or another school. We don't have that detail before us in terms of where their source of education will come from.
The reason why I asked, because they may not all go to the same school because of different academic levels or particular need. Therefore, the use of taxis, which is common within this type of schooling, the area would have to look after up to maybe 5 taxis taking children backwards and forwards twice a day, pick up and drop off. Would you say that was correct?
I don't want to enter into debate with you, so my answer simply is I don't know.
Of course, as I say, some schools even provide their own transport to get the children round to the various schools. We don't know that because it's not in here. And we're not getting that kind of information. Chair, I think for a minute, I'll fall back on my sword and have a wee think about this, if I may.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Any further questions from our colleagues? Councillor Land.
Thank you, Chairman. When we talk about the area of special character, would it be possible to ask how we come to that conclusion? What are the factors that we assess to get to a special character area, namely this one we're talking about?
In terms of the background of the designation of that policy, I might have to rely on my colleague to give us more information around that. I could just read the policy itself for you, which at the beginning of it says, within the gardens area of East Clacton, the new development shall have a particular regard to special character and appearance of the area to ensure the special character, and then it goes on and gives a criteria, but it's effectively character and appearance. But if my colleague wants to say anything more, then that might be possible.
Thank you. And just to add to that, yeah, the special area of character is a local designation that's within the local plan. It has been in place for the whole time I've been involved in the council. It's been carried forward from local plan to local plan for more than 30 years. And the main principle of it is around the character appearance of the area, because the conservation area, formal conservation area with national designation, doesn't extend to this area. And this is one of two special character areas that we have in the district, the other being the avenues in Frinton.
Thank you, Mr. Guyver. Councillor Land, do you want to come back on that?
Yes, thank you. That is clear. Thank you very much. I think you've broadened that slightly out to what I was trying to get to in my mind around how that character could be affected, and clearly you've documented it is not just solely around it's not just aligned to new properties that might be built in that area, because clearly it's very well built up and has been there and existed for some time. When we visited the property, and I am relatively new to this committee, although I've been a councillor for many years, I'm starting to get a feel for what you probably should and could do when you're on a visit. We didn't notice a particularly large garden in any way, shape or form, certainly not on the entrance that we visited the site. I've looked at the downward drop on the plan, but can anyone enlighten me to any garden space that might exist at the back of the property and what that size might be? Or is it purely a contained premises without a garden as such, other than that skirts around the side where the front door was?
So you can see on this plan here, this is the rear garden area. If I go back to the floor plans, you can see the shape of the ground floor here. So it's the area in this location that you can see in that photo. So this is the rear garden area. So the report confirms that it's small, but it sort of meets the requirements of the size of the care home.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything to add or any further questions, Councillor Land?
Well, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your neighbours. And that rings very strongly in my ear when I visited this site and afforded my consideration to this proposal, and that is weighing heavily on my mind and will apply to the weight of consideration as has been mentioned on my decision. I also take very into consideration the weight of concern that we're being presented with here tonight. That's always a very key consideration for me. No more questions, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, we will now go into debate. Councillor Alexander. Could you turn your microphone on, please?
It's on. Yes. I think the technology is like some of us councillors, a little bit rickety. Okay. Right, where were we? Oh, yes. I'm torn, very much so. And the reason why I'm torn is because what we have here is a golden opportunity and to enhance the lives of young people. But so much has come out in the last 20, 25 minutes, which I knew nothing about, which was not in here. And I'm really concerned that I'm not sure that we are in control of the full facts of what's going on. It bothers me greatly that we're in a position where we can make a decision such as this without the knowledge of really what the use of it will be, what the impact it will actually have on neighbours. There's nothing in front of us to give us any idea, Chair, of where we're going to go with it. So for me, as I say, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Well, while we're having a think about the debate, I have to say that my position on this is on the fence, because I totally agree with you, Councillor Alexander. There is a need for these facilities, but when we were actually on the site visit, what was going through my mind was, is this the right place for it? That was the question on my mind. However, there are material planning considerations to be considered, which leaves me on the fence. So I'm also of a quandary. I wonder what colleagues have to say. So we are now in debate. Difficult one. Councillor Goldman.
Yeah, well, I've been thinking about this for quite a while. I sort of question as to where is the right place for this. It's where. Is it next door to me, next door to you, to any of us? I really don't know. I mean, the property itself has been a care home, and there's change of use now is going to be possibly, if it goes through, a home for children, which is a great thing. It's a difficult question to ask as to what type of children you're going to have in there, what needs they're going to have, what backgrounds they come from. I don't think it's a question we can answer, because I don't think any of us will know, and I don't think we ever will know, you know. So yeah, it does leave us in a bit of a quandary. But as I say, I will consider the fact that where is the right place to have it. I think it could be anywhere. I don't think it has to necessarily be in a particular place, wherever that particular place is. I don't know. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on it really at the moment. That's it really. Nowhere to go with that at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Goldman. Well, as our Head of Planning, Mr. Pateman G, often reminds us, what we have before us is what we need to make our decision on. And we know where we were because we were there yesterday. Councillor Land. Member of the public, this is a committee meeting. We've had the public speaking. You did not register to speak, so the answer to your question is no. Please do not interrupt. Councillor Land.
Yeah, so I suppose I should really just cut to the chase. I mean, I put here location, which I think you've just competently surmised. But at the end of the day, I think my concern for the neighbours, direct neighbours and the surrounding areas in a special character area, which there is only 2 of in tendering, which puts a certain degree of weight on it to me, is that we could end up here with a situation where there could be possible noise and disturbance over a hugely extended period of time. The challenge of not knowing when, what type of care these people might need, is it basic, is it intermediate, is it intense, presents its own set of questions. But I do believe there will be potentially a level of disturbance, if not in the initial period of this care home being implemented, but certainly over an extended period of time. And if you do have a problem in a facility like this, there is a huge possibility that that problem could persist for a number of years, not months or days. And for me, in that location, with that feel and that character of that location and the proximity and the closeness of the properties around, for me, it did not feel the right place. But as has been pointed out, where is the right place? Not on my back door, Jack. That's my comment.
Mr. Pateman G.
So I think it might be helpful just to go over the policy that perhaps you're concentrating on at this moment in time in the debate, which is PPL 12, which is the designation of the gardens area of special character. Now, we mentioned at the beginning of that, which was that within the gardens area, new development shall have particular regard for the special character and appearance of the area. New development. New development can actually be interpreted in two ways. New development as in construction of new development, or new development as in change of use is a representation of development in planning terms. The policy, though, is weighted against that. It's more towards new development per se, in that it talks about new development shall conform with the existing building line. In other words, a new house or new property would have to conform to the existing building lines of that area, be of two-storey scale. Again, it's indicating that in that context of new development is a construction development. Again, we are talking about conforming to the existing density and not appearing cramped or incongruous to the street scene. Again, that's really referring to new construction development in terms of getting the correct density that is in keeping with the character of the prevailing area. Doesn't include flats. And then we're into the last one, which is E, which was pointed out earlier, which is be residential or retain a residential appearance. Well, of course, this proposal is a change of use, but it is a retaining a residential appearance. It then goes on to say commercial uses, including private hotels, guest houses and offices, will not normally be considered appropriate. But its context, or whether that means brand new or change of use, is unclear. But ultimately, the caveat before that is that it retains a residential appearance, and that is what the proposal does. So my argument, and the argument that I would be faced if I was to argue this as a reason for refusal, is that our policy does not support that reason for refusal. It supports this proposal in the character sense that it retains the residential appearance as is effectively. Noise isn't specifically listed in that policy. Noise is a separate material consideration. Does the addition of 5 children plus 3 carers create so much noise that it would be severe enough to be a warrant refusal within a residential environment? Our problem here as planning officers is the comparison of previous uses. The previous use was a dwelling, a normal standard large property as you have seen on site. As a property, we have no control over the number of children a couple might have within that household. 5 is perhaps rare these days, but ultimately that is a possibility. That is why, to a certain degree, we have proposed a condition that limits it to that 5, because I think our expectations is that it is a residential property, as a standard house, it wouldn't exceed or likely to exceed that. Ultimately, though, there is no limit on C3. Before that, we had a care home situation, and this is at the same time as the designation, I understand, for the area, it was a care home. That is in the same use class as the proposal you have before you. As you can see, our issue here is a question of, is there harm? But our issue as officers is, what is demonstrable planning harm that we can materially defend in that context? And I think that is where we are as officers, and I don't think we can help you much more beyond that at this stage.
Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. I've been very wary in deliberation this evening. I've been watching every word I've been saying, but as it's been opened up a little bit more, it gives me a chance to maybe expand on my views. It obviously is shared by other members of the committee. This is an area which has a special status. There's no two ways about it. Everybody knows that Alderney Gardens is one of the most beautiful places around Clacton. It's what it is, and we're very proud to have it there. It's all to do, and you've heard me say this many times, Chairs, it's all to do with balance. It's getting the balance right between what is for building is correct, and within the policies it works well, and the needs of the people. Because all these, in my mind, as councillors, we take that into consideration. And because of that, we end up in this situation where we're finding it difficult. Now, we've been told that within this special area, such things would not be looked at, such as a I don't know, maybe a coffee bar or something commercial property of that ilk, because it's run as a profit. But, and so it should be. The company that is putting this together is a limited company, and limited companies make profits. So we've fallen now into another area, a grey area. And it's confusing enough as it is. But this agenda does not explain in detail enough for me to be able to give a fair, balanced opinion at this stage. And so we're going to vote eventually. I would be considering, Chair, that I may just have to abstain.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Colleagues? Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I've been on this committee a long time, and I well remember where I voted one way at a similar type home, and for years afterwards I regretted my decision. It was in Kirby, I can tell you now, and consequently the problems that were caused by the noise of the children there absolutely ruined the life of some of the neighbours. So I now say, well, how does this differ from a house, normal husband and wife and 5 family children? And I don't really know, because it appears from our notes that the applicants haven't contacted or discussed their plans with us. So we don't really know what's going on. We are told that there will be a bit of noise because there are up to 15 members of staff, only 3 at any one time. So there'll be quite a bit of toing and froing of staff, I would think. It is a difficult one. It's a very nice property, and I can only hope that our worst fears are not met. I agree entirely with Councillor Alexander. These sort of homes are definitely needed, more and more so these days. But at the present moment, I am not in favour of the application because there's too much on there that I don't know about, that I can't firm up on. So at the present moment, I wouldn't be supporting an approval.
Thank you, Councillor White. Just going back to comments that were made by our head of planning with regard to the makeup of what would be the household, where you'd have 5 children and I believe up to 3 adult staff members. Well, that could be a family that move in next door to you, and perhaps their 2 older children are criminal masterminds. And you wouldn't know, would you, till they moved in, and then the activity starts. So, as you said, Councillor Land, you can't pick your neighbours, but it's still a difficult one, and I'm still on the fence because of the need for these facilities and these services. Any further comments? Councillor Land, Councillor Sudra, then Councillor Wiggins.
Thank you, Chairman. I think you've summed that up very well, but I just can't get past there is a need. I think I'm very clear on who the type of clientele that would potentially be presented to this home should it be approved, and I fundamentally believe that could cause disruption over an extended period of time in what is a beautiful area, which has been quite rightly pointed out by my colleague to my right. And whilst there is a need, I think that there is also, there will always be a solution to be found elsewhere. This is not the right location for that in my opinion. So I would move refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Land. Councillor Sudra.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just reading this sentence. The individual reason why children may need the home is not a material planning consideration. So essentially, we don't need to know which children need to move into this home, but I think I'm leaning towards the approval. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Sudra. Councillor Wiggins.
These sort of homes are needed, and I agree with what's been said before. But is there any other information that we could get that would help us with our decision? Because most of us are, I think, sitting on the fence. And I just think that if there was just something else that we could have, that might help.
Councillor Sudra.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, so going on from Councillor Wiggins' point, do we have any knowledge of the other homes, for instance? And, you know, is there a lot of disruption, any objections, that type of thing?
Bateman G.
Okay. The biggest problem I've had with planning in the last 30 years of doing this job is it doesn't do very well with judging the behaviour of people. That is ultimately the issue. I have had situations where a nightclub can sit quite happily in a residential situation, no problems whatsoever for years and years and years, and as soon as a new owner takes over that nightclub, it is the biggest pain in the neck to everybody because of everything under the sun that goes on there. And unfortunately, that is the problem with planning. It's not supposed to control or dictate what is a risk or fear of behaviour of people. Your choices, and I'm going to put everything on the table, are simply this. Approve as before you, because I don't think you're going to get any more evidence or information beyond what you've already got. Ultimately, your other choices here are, you could seek to maybe consider that maybe the number of children at this proposal is too high, because you consider that the risk to amenity is too high for that number of children, and therefore you might consider that a reduction of that number of children could be a condition, and the basis that is what we have conditioned in your papers at the moment. We have conditioned 5. Of course, I will just mention that the applicant could appeal that condition. An applicant can appeal a refusal, but they can also appeal a condition. Your other option, again, this is another point where an applicant could appeal, but they may consider this to be an opportunity, is to consider temporary permission. to give this a time frame to see what the evidence, if you like, of its compatibility for the area would be like over a defined time. Of course, your other option is to refuse. And if you are to refuse, I am seeking to understand the planning merits of that refusal. Now, that refusal needs to be substantive reasons in respect of where you're going with that. And if you are genuinely heading in that direction, I would certainly say that I will try to help where I can as necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Pateman G. That's very useful, especially the part about temporary. That's something that I must admit I hadn't considered. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. Although I must say I relate and feel quite worried that in your 30 years that you made the analogy that it's like a nightclub owner, but I can assure you, please, I can assure you that the gardens holding in around that way would never be in the kind of area that would attract a nightclub. So we're quite safe there, I think. And the other thing is, of course, with the special status that it holds, it wouldn't allow to have one there because it would be a profit-making organisation. So there we are. On this, look, part-time, sort of give it a go. I just wish that this was somewhere else and it was all straightforward because, again, I cannot emphasise enough, Chair, that we actually need these kind of places, but it's all to do with, as I said, balance. And I'm now listening to Councillor Land, and I agree that this is a brilliant application, but the situation in my mind I am struggling hard with because it is not, in my mind, the ideal situation. The challenges of children, especially in special needs, mainstream children also end up in homes. We've fostered them, so we know exactly what happens within that system. But that can range from a moderate problem up to a severe behavioural problem within that system. And we don't control that. We have no control over that. And that's another thing that's worrying us. Within this, we just don't have enough information in this pack. And one quick last thing, if I may. Here we have, years ago, or not years ago, up to 6 months ago, we used to have all the letters from the people who are voicing their objections. I like to see what the general public are saying. We have been elected to support them in the way that Councillor Honeywood has come here tonight to support the area. I want to see what the people say, and I would like to see that, Chair, back in this agenda so we can see the whole picture.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Mr. Pateman G.
Just 2 points there. The first point is that, can I just make sure that we're very open on the idea that this is actually for any child in respect of the use. There is no assumption that there are special needs children only or come from a particular background. This is just simply a children's home, and therefore the child may not have any issues whatsoever. Ultimately, the other second point there is that in your papers, the representations are summarised by the officer. That has always been the case, and that is the same with all the consultation responses as well. They are normally summarised as opposed to dumping the entire planning file on there before you. If, however, there is a consideration in respect of that template that needs to be taken up separately, please do so with myself or Gary Guyver.
Thank you, Mr. Pateman G. I mentioned, oh, sorry, excuse me, Mrs. Fisher, carry on.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from Mr. Pateman G, I just wanted to just clarify that the definition of care in the Used Classes Order in relation to children, it says includes the personal care of children and medical care and treatment, and that's it. That's the definition of care within C2. So if the permission is authorised, it would fall within the definition of care for children as defined in the use classes order. So it doesn't actually go into any specific characteristics or requirements. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that point. And just regarding if members are minded to refuse, it's just a reminder that obviously, as you know, when we refuse, if you are minded to refuse, we have to give reasons for that refusal, and there is a right of appeal. It's just to bear in mind that if there is an appeal, we will have to produce evidence to substantiate the reasons for that refusal. So just to bear in mind, if you're thinking of refusal, you need to think about your reasons and what evidence we have to, if in the event of an appeal, what evidence we have to support those reasons. Because as you know, unreasonable behaviour can lead to cost awards against the council. So it's just a reminder to members to bear that in mind when you're debating further. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. I was just going to ask before that Mr. Bateman-G to just give us a quick overview on how a temporary approval of this application would work. How would that work?
So this application, for the majority of it, is change of use. So ultimately, there's one alteration that wouldn't be temporary. That'd just be a change of the window and the door. But the rest of it is obviously change of use. So temporary permission in respect of that element, we would normally apply somewhere between 3 to 5 years temporary use. At which point, but of course, before anyone else. But of course, the length of time is a debate that you would have to have separately. Ultimately, at the end of that change of use period, it would not be renewed unless they were to put another planning application to continue the use, and that may be another temporary use, or it might be for permanent use at that point. Failing the application, the use would revert back to the original use, which in this case would be C3 as a standard dwelling.
Thank you, Mr. Bateman-G. Councillor Land?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I can only really come back to, the representations here. 58 letters of objection, many of which are sitting in this room this evening. There is a severe weight of objection from the local people that will be mostly affected by this application, should it be approved. And I'm looking at the notes from the officers and the harm to the garden area of special character, which I and others have mentioned. I only, potentially. Harm to the visual amenities, highway safety. I know Essex have not said anything, but for me, when you look at a planning application, if the immediate problem is being presented to you that this might cause from the local people that are going to be most affected, we should sit up and listen. I once again move refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Land. Councillor Land, is that a proposal?
Yes.
To refuse this application?
Yes, it is, yes.
So we will need to clarify those reasons for refusal. Councillor Alexander?
Given the decision made by Councillor Land, I'm more than happy to pull back from my original decision and say I'm quite happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. So we now need to probably go to Mr. Bateman-G to get our reasons for refusal, so that we're happy with what the reasons for refusal are proposed and that the seconder is happy.
So I'm just clarifying a policy point that my colleague has just pointed out to me. Can you just give me one moment?
Yes,
while I do
certainly.
something? sorry, apologies, ended up with a bit of a debate between us because we are still, and this demonstrates to everybody that ultimately it is difficult because we are dealing with a kind of a situation that is before you for that very reason. You know, this is the debate. If I was to try and construct reasons for refusal that have been based on the conversation of the debate to this point, I would probably phrase it as in, what is the difference between C3 use to C2? The difference is, and to whatever extent that difference is, you're considering that that difference is an intensification. So it is reason of its intensification and arguably non-typical residential use because it involves activities, comings and goings that are not atypical of a dwelling, that you are considering that erodes the character or the quiet, specifically, character, sedate character of this area, which you are considering has been specifically recognised as in the experience of that character. So you might therefore consider policy PPL12 in that generic sense, although I would say that that is very much high level as opposed to specifics, because those specifics are more respective of appearance and new build, in my opinion. You also have SP7 as well. You might also be considering that there is a lack of evidence in terms of demonstrating the operation of a children's home and how it would materially impact the neighbouring occupiers. Now that goes back to a debate about whether temporary might have given you that evidence, but you are debating the application before you and therefore on its individual merits. So therefore, if you are considering that there is a lack of material evidence to demonstrate that there would be no harm, then ultimately you may be looking at, again, at various policies, SPL3, LP10 and SP7 in respect of protection of residential amenity. So if I can put that in a kind of total package, as it were, you might consider something on the lines of the proposal by reason of the intensification and non-typical residential use would introduce a level of activity and comings and goings that would erode the established quiet residential character of the gardens area of special character, contrary to policy PPL12 and SP7. In addition, in respect of the absence of robust site-specific evidence demonstrating the operation of the children's home would not materially impact neighbouring occupiers, the proposal fails to satisfactorily demonstrate compliance with policies SPL3, LP10 and SP7 relating to the protection of residential amenity. For example.
Councillor Land.
Put the words right out of my mouth.
So you're happy with that, Councillor Land? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And your seconder, Councillor Alexander?
Yes, sir.
Reasons for refusing this application? Yes?
Yes. I was going to ask maybe to repeat it, but I won't.
Okay. Well, I know you were caught between a rock and a hard place, and so was I. I was very on the fence, but my feeling when we were on a site visit, I know it's not a material consideration, but my feeling was that it was the wrong place. That was my feeling. So I will now slide off the fence and vote for refusal. So, if there are no further comments, we will now go to the vote. So we are voting to refuse this application. So if I could have a show of hands, please, members, to refuse this application. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against? None. And those abstaining? 2. So that application is refused. There will now be about a 10-minute break till the next application will be heard, and we will close the live stream for 10 minutes. Welcome back to Tendring District Council's Planning Committee. Today, Tuesday, the 7th of July 2026, and this is part 2, and we're kicking off this part with the agenda, changing the agenda. So this item is now item 6, which is A1 26/00287 OUT. It's land to the north of Colchester Road, Elmstead, and to present this application for us this evening, our officer, Alison Newland. Go ahead, Alison.
Thank you. So this is an application for outline planning permission for up to 30 dwellings, including access at this stage. So appearance, scale, layout and landscaping are reserved for a subsequent application. I'll just refer you to the update sheet. There's an additional objection from the Parish Council and 4 letters of objection. There's an officer response to those additional comments within the update papers. There's also a correction to paragraph 7.58, confirming that there isn't a tree preservation order adjacent to Tye Road that has been removed. So this shows you the application site. The site is outside the settlement boundary, but it abuts it to its eastern and northern boundaries. You've got 2-storey dwellings to the north here. Off Barley Close is Barley Lane is the nearest road there. And then you've got single-storey sheltered housing here off Meadow Close. So the site is in the strategic green gap in our emerging local plan, but that's at an early stage, so that currently carries very limited weight. It's currently agricultural land of grade 2, very good quality. This shows you an aerial view. You can see the application site, and there's also 15 dwellings which have been built up here to the north of Barley Lane. This shows you the Elmstead neighbourhood plan. There's a large section in the report assessing the proposal against the various policies of the neighbourhood plan. So the settlement boundary, this is the application site here, the settlement boundary is the same as in our adopted local plan, so the site abuts it to the east and north, but it's in a green landscape buffer in the neighbourhood plan, which is all of this land here. And that's been designated to prevent coalescence with the Tendring Colchester Borders garden community, which is over in this location, and to retain the separate identity of Elmstead from that new settlement. You've also got important view number 3 here, which looks directly up Tye Road along the western boundary of the site. So the report assesses the proposal against the neighbourhood plan as a material consideration of substantial weight, in taking the current housing land supply position into account and the limited harm arising from development of this well-contained site. It's considered that the adverse impacts of conflict with the neighbourhood plan would not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. These are some site photos. So this is from the existing agricultural field gate looking into the site where the proposed vehicle access would be. And you can see those Barley Lane properties here and Tye Road tree boundaries on the far side there. These are the bungalows at Meadow Close. Again, this is the vehicle access into the site here. This is from Tye Road, the Barley Close, 2-storey houses, and the application site is over here. And then looking from the end of Tye Road, as you're going into the village of Elmstead, you get a glimpse through here at the bottom of the site, but there's good level of screening around the edges. This is looking from Colchester Road. You can see that you get a strong edge of settlement character. You can see the residential development on the opposite side of the field, and also down Meadow Close, the roofs of the bungalows. So it's an outline application for up to 30 dwellings, including access. So this is just an indicative layout plan to show how it could be laid out. They're indicating heights of up to 1.5 storeys, and given the low density of development, no concerns arise at this stage regarding the potential impact upon neighbours. The points of access are shown here. The red arrow is the vehicular access into Meadow Close, and then there's also a pedestrian and cycle access here onto the corner onto Colchester Road, where you've got the bus stops just in this location. This is the detailed access plan where it would join onto that turning head of Meadow Close, which carries on in this direction for about another 16 dwellings, I think, are down here. And then that's the pedestrian cycle link in that corner. There's also recommended highways conditions, which include a 20-mile-an-hour zone to Meadow Close, traffic calming and double yellow lines for that area, and up to £15,000 for bus stop upgrades. This is the indicative landscape strategy plan. So again, just indicative, but it shows you how the site could be laid out, shows the retention of the existing boundary landscaping and strengthening to all boundaries, a attenuation features. They're showing a suds basin in this area, and then these attenuation features would be mainly dry. You've also got a small trim trail indicated up here and a play area in the centre of the site, and then wider public open space around the bottom. And this is an aerial image from the applicant, just a CGI to indicate how it could be laid out, and the edge of the settlements. You've got Colchester Road and Tye Road, which provides strong defensible boundaries to the site. And then you've got the Barley Close development to the north, with another 15 houses have been built on this area at the top. So there's no objections from statutory consultees. The proposal is considered sustainable when assessed under the tilted balance, and the benefits of up to 30 dwellings with 30% affordable housing carry significant weight in the absence of a 5-year housing supply. Approval is recommended subject to a Section 106 legal agreement to secure 30% affordable housing, up to £15,000 for bus stop improvements, RAMS contribution, on-site open space, and the BNG monitoring fee. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. For this application, there are 5 speakers for this one. We'll start with the agent, Rosanna Metcalfe. Ms. Metcalfe, if you'd like to take a seat, and from when you hit the button in the middle, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I'm here on behalf of the applicant Welbeck Land to support the officer's recommendation for approval. Elmstead Market is one of the most sustainable villages in the district due to its proximity to the city of Colchester and its high-level services. It is located approximately 3 kilometres from the edge of the city and is within a 10-minute cycle or 5-minute bus ride of key employment areas, including the University of Essex. The village is also connected to the city by a continuous footway along Colchester Road, whilst the city centre is just a 10-minute bus journey away. The village has a number of services to meet the day-to-day needs, including a primary school, which is 500 metres from the site and connected by footway. As you will have seen from your site visit and from the plans presented by the officer, the site is exceptionally well contained by its surroundings, and its development will round off the settlement in this location. No trees or hedgerows will be lost as a result of this proposal, and in respect of B&G, assessments demonstrate the proposal will deliver a 24% increase in habitat units and 65% increase in hedgerow units. All the properties will be between 1 and 1.5 stories, and as noted in the Council SMART, this could play an important role to help address the requirements for older persons. The site is not allocated in the Made Neighbourhood Plan, which was prepared in the context of the previous local plan before the standard methodology nearly doubled the council's housing needs. In light of this, and the fact that the council cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, sustainable sites such as this need to come forward to meet the council's housing needs. As we have demonstrated in our submission, and as confirmed by officers in the committee report, it is not considered that the development of this site will adversely affect the function of the green landscape buffer identified in the neighbourhood plan. The proposals will not result in coalescence or harm to separation between the village and the garden community. There are no technical objections to this proposals, and in planning terms, there are very limited harms. The benefits of this proposal include much needed market and affordable housing, 1 and 1.5 storey homes, financial contributions towards bus stop upgrades, and support and investment in local facilities and services. In light of the above and the officer's recommendation of approval, we would ask that members approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Metcalfe. There are no members of the public speaking in favour of the application. We have 1 member of the public speaking against the application, Ms. Tara Gargilulo. Is that how? Right, sorry, I do apologise. So if you take a seat, and from when you push the button, you have 3 minutes. Middle.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak this evening, and I am here to represent my neighbors of Elmstead, specifically the ones that live in Meadow Close. which is an elderly aged community comprised of 30 homes. That was built about 10 years ago, and 4 years from now, another development of 18 homes was built. Now, those 18 homes have a private sewer system. Anglian Water does not own these pipes, but they are aware that the developer of Southeast Developments that built these 18 homes did not put in the proper pumps. Therefore, for the past 4 years, the elderly people who live in these 30 bungalows have experienced very bad health issues. Now, I've been on the phone with Anglian Water to 5 different departments: the complaints department, the pre-development department, the development department, the operation department, and it turns out they don't talk with each other. So even though Anglian Water said that there is enough capacity for these additional 30 bungalows, the fact of the matter is elderly are getting sick in our town. My neighbor, Linda, wanted to come tonight, but she's now suffering from vertigo, and she has dizziness and headaches. God forbid one of our elderly neighbors falls and breaks a hip and something drastic occurs. Now, here representing this development is Joe Warburg. Joe, can you raise your hand? Ever since she started working there 4 years ago, she's been having very bad headaches and migraines to the point where she has to take off work, and she's even had a brain scan. Now, no new development should be allowed to go through until Anglian Water fixes this problem. I have an email here today that was sent from Allison Fearson in the Communications Executive Office at Anglian Water, and she writes, We are aware of recent odor complaints primarily affecting the residents in the Meadow Close area. Our investigations indicate that these odors are associated with a private pumping station owned and maintained by Southeast Developments rather than Anglian Water Public Network. It is not our responsibility to do maintenance on this private asset. So, in conclusion, I don't think any development should be allowed until Anglian Water works with this private development, because this new development wants to connect even more pipes. So imagine if there's another 60 or 90 people using the bathroom, using the sewage system, and how sick our elderly neighbors might get. I ask you to reject these homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garlido. From the town or parish council, the council chairman, Councillor Adam Gladwin. Councillor Gladwin, if you'd like to take a seat. And from the minute you push the little button in the middle, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I need to focus my comments today on some ongoing issues since our initial objections were placed. For important context, this application is located in a narrow strip of countryside between the village of Elmstead Market and the Tendring Colchester Borders Garden Community site. This application would threaten coalescence between the settlements, which is prohibited by numerous policies across the MPPF local plan and Elmstead's recent neighbourhood plan. We understand for this reason the application was initially going to be recommended for refusal by officers until a letter from the applicant's agent dated June 3rd. I hope you have received the update sheet today to the report issued with our written concerns about this letter. It seems that the letter from the agent influenced the officer to change their recommendation to approval. However, this letter was based on a number of false assertions that made for misleading conclusions. There is a number of statements in this letter which made their way into the initial report you received, which are outright falsehoods. While a couple of these falsehoods are corrected in today's update to the report, we are concerned they've made it through to this late stage where they've only been rectified a couple of hours ago and cannot be properly scrutinised by members of the public. More than 40 of my parishioners have submitted objections to this application, many of which are here tonight. No one supports it. Even the people here tonight haven't had a chance to understand the update correcting the falsehoods. They've had no chance to reply. For example, in the letter and the report, talk about a country park being formed east of the A133 Link Road as part of the garden community. This country park simply does not exist. It seems to be a misunderstanding of the Sallery Brook Country Park 2 miles away the other side of the garden community. A lot of the assumptions made by the letter misunderstand the garden community's own green gap protections. I'm disappointed the report, especially today, doesn't quite clarify these factual inaccuracies. Furthermore, the letter and the decision seem to be made with a lack of understanding how the garden community planning policies were made at the same time as our neighbourhood plan less than 2 years ago. They interact as one cohesive planning framework to stop coalescence between the communities. There's 2 essential policies to be considered for this development. The first, Elm 1 settlement development boundaries, is a clear binary policy. A development is either within or outside of this boundary. This application is outside of the boundary. To go ahead with this application is just asking you to ignore planning policy. It does not meet the requirements. Then the next neighbourhood plan policy, Elm 2, protecting the settlements of Elmstead Market, as aptly named. This policy was carefully designed to protect the limited space between Elmstead and the garden community. The reason is clear that when leaving one settlement, there must be a transition from built surroundings into open countryside and another transition into what's a distinct other settlement. This is essential for my historic rural village and the innovative garden community, which in many ways is more akin to a cityscape.
Councillor Gladwin, it's 3 minutes, thank you. And next we have the 2 ward members, starting with Councillor Gary Scott. If you'd like to take a seat, Councillor Scott. I know you know the drill. 5 minutes from when you push the button. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, councillors, officers and members of the public. I'm speaking against this application on the edge of Elmstead Market. Elmstead Market has had over 70% increase in housing with the lack of any new infrastructure. The schools are full, the GP surgery is small, and it will not be able to cope with any additional patients coming to Elmstead Market. Surrounding schools and health facilities are also full. We have a very busy road going through the village, the A133. All traffic movements go through the crossroads in Elmstead Market. I've said this time and time again at this committee. No improvements to the crossroads, but it must be done. I've lost count how many times I've said that, and I'm shocked and disappointed that Essex Highways have not mentioned it in the report about improvements to the A133 and those crossroads. However, Highways are keen to improve the bus stops and real-time information boards at the cost of £15,000 Section 106 monies, but yet no mention of the crossroads in the Elmstead Market. The give-way lines are gone, and the people have to wait ages at that crossroads just to cross safely. And there's been accidents on that crossroads, and I'm surprised nothing is mentioned from Essex Highways about that crossroads. The report mentions double yellow lines on the site. How will these be enforced and policed? They can't even enforce and police the red double lines in Elmstead Market. How on earth are they going to do the yellow ones? The access to the site must not go through a retirement complex, and this will cause further problems to Oatlands Junction due to the traffic coming off on the A133 from Oatlands. This also includes school drop-offs and pickups that use Elmcroft School, that use Oatlands and Harvest Way to get to the school, because of the crossroads going Holly Way, and the other direction is Chocker. This will also affect surrounding neighbouring roads, are also congested. Any play equipment should not be installed here, but monies towards newer play equipment, in my view, should go to the new community centre where play equipment will be sourced in the future. The A133 is a fast and busy road, yet no improvement in safety measures. Speeding along this road is intense. The bus service is limited, and no bus service operates out of Elmstead in the evening. The new link road, once it's completed, people will travel through Elmstead Market along this junction, along the A133, instead of Freighton and Great Bromley. We'll add more vehicular movements on this road, causing further issues. Elmstead has had enough of house building. In fact, Elmstead Market has had 5 new housing estates, 5 small closes, all within the village, all traffic converging on the A133 and those crossroads. The buffer zone between Elmstead Market and the garden community was once a kilometre. Then it went down to 500 metres. If this development is successful, it will be reduced even further. The emerging local plan has suggested that Elmstead will not have any more housing. No more house building. The village has had its fair share. People are fed up of seeing more and more houses with no new infrastructure. The only thing that has come to Elmstead Market, new infrastructure, is a pedestrian crossing. But that took over 25 to 30 years to instigate a pedestrian crossing that was badly needed in Elmstead Market. Myself and Councillor Wiggins and Parish Council do welcome that. But that's it. That's the only infrastructure we've had. This application will cause issues and problems for residents who live there in Meadow Close, where most of those residents in Meadow Close are elderly. I would suggest that I'm disappointed that this access is going to go through that site. I cannot believe we didn't consider using Tyre Road. In the report, it does clearly state the trees along that side did have TPOs, but those TPOs were removed in 2017. So it gives an opportunity to have point of access, if you councillors are minded to approve, to have access from that point, but not through a pensioner retirement area where the mobile bus that comes, the mobile library bus that comes, struggles to get round in that complex, and people park there, visitors, medical visitors, deliveries. It's going to be absolute chocker and a nightmare. So I'm urging councillors to refuse this application tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. We need Councillor Wiggins back in the room now. Thank you, Bethany. So our final speaker on this item is the joint ward member, Councillor Anne Wiggins. So the minute you push the red button, Councillor Wiggins, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman, councillors and officers, thank you for letting me speak on this application. Whilst this is an outline application, a few things still need to be considered. The site falls outside the settlement development boundary in the adopted local and neighbourhood plans, but within a draft strategic green gap in the emerging local plan draft, which also said that there will be no housing, but due to the fact that this is a draft document, speculative developers are still putting in applications and hoping that the tilted balance will work in their favour. If this site was to get planning permission, it would further add to the erosion of the buffer zone between Elmstead and the proposed Tendring Colchester border garden community, and it will be built on Grade 2 farmland. It is also less than 800 metres from the new roundabout on the A133. In the last 15 years, the village has grown from 800 houses with little to no provision made for infrastructure to 1,000, and if all the outstanding applications go ahead, there could be as many as 1,500. No report has been received from Essex County Council Schools Service, which would create a need for funding for the local schools at which present are at capacity. Children who have lived in the village for a considerable time may be given a place, may not be given a place, as has happened in Alresford recently. Further on in this report, it says that they have been consulted but have not sent any comments or have they requested Section 106 monies. There is no heading for health and no comment has been made on this. A contribution will be needed for health provision as the surgery is at capacity and parking almost non-existent as it is in a converted bungalow situated on a narrow lane surrounded by other domestic properties. At present, it is opening on a part-time basis with fewer doctors. Accessing dentists and pharmacies is also difficult. The £15,000 being allocated to transport for the upgrade of the bus stops in real time would be better spent on the crossroads, which are in constant use. During school drop-off and pick-up times at Marketfield School, this area becomes a huge bottleneck with pupil transport. It is also complicated by the addition of delivery lorries to Budgeons on the corner, and despite the double red lines, which are constantly flouted, a cut-through for those wanting to use the new link road, which goes to the A120 and not the A12, as stated in the report at 778, or going the reverse way to Alresford and beyond. Buses do not connect Alresford to Elmstead along School Road, and it would take a long time to do this. Also, some buses stop at 6:15 going to Colchester, so getting about later in the day is more problematic. There will be increased car movements through Meadow Close, which is a development for older people, some of whom have mobility needs and use walking aids such as wheelchairs and buggies, as well as cars. This area can get quite congested, and this could become a bigger problem, if there are more vehicles trying to get to the proposed new development. Fire engines need to have access at all times. The junction with Oatlands is used by parents getting their children to the primary school, and at present parking is a problem in Holly Way and Harvest Way. The Tendring Mobile Library stops on Meadow Close as well. Should this development go ahead, I ask that 30 dwellings be the maximum and not increased, because whilst I appreciate that Tendring cannot demonstrate a 5-year housing supply, it is very sad that Elmstead's unique character is being further eroded, yet by more development and further reducing the green gap between it and Colchester. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wiggins. I'll just ask our officer if there's any comments made by the speakers that you'd like to come back on.
Yes, please.
Okay.
The first speaker focused on drainage problems in the existing area. That is covered at paragraph 6.87 of the report. So the proposal will connect to mains drainage and Anglia Water, confirming there's sufficient capacity with no objection, and any existing drainage problems are obviously to be resolved outside of this planning application. The second speaker mentioned an error in the agent's letter. So the agent's letter was submitted on the 3rd of June. They also raised concern that the public didn't have a chance to respond to that letter. It was basically, there wasn't any new information in that letter. It was just reiterating concerns already stated throughout the report, basically in conflict with the neighbourhood plan. So there wasn't any change to the application that would have needed consultation. If you look in your update papers, there's a reference to the applicant incorrectly referring to a country park on the edge of the development, edge of the Tendring Colchester Borders Garden Community. The central photo there, image, just shows you that that's actually a strategic green gap. So even though it's not a country park, it's a strategic green gap, which you can sort of understand the similarities and the confusions. That's not a significant issue, and the report correctly refers to it as a strategic green gap. As that providing an extra bit of separation to the garden communities regardless of what's secured in the Elmstead neighbourhood plan. There's also a reference to healthcare and why there's no healthcare contribution or comments, and this is below the threshold for consultation with the NHS, which would be 50 dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Members, questions for our officer? Councillor Alexander and Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. Just to make sure that I've got this clear in my mind, we're actually looking at an outline for access to be considered. That's what's on the cards. Am I correct on that?
Yes, for up to 30 dwellings with 2 points of access.
When we did the site visits, Chair, I was looking at what is going to be the access. Now, I also saw how close the two houses either side of that access were. Whether they're prepared to relinquish any land, that's nothing to do with us, of course. But Could you give me some idea of the width of that access as it stands now?
So you can see on this plan, the existing carriageway on Meadow Close is 4.8 metres, and the new carriageway would be 6 metres to meet modern standards, so it would widen as it comes into the site.
Would you mind repeating that? I've got a machine running behind me and I'm missing it so much.
Sorry, yeah, Meadow Close is 4.8 metres wide at the moment, where you can see this turning T-head at the top, and then the proposed road would be 6 metres wide because it will need to meet current standards.
Then may I ask, how are they going to derive that, given the fact that the housing either side is literally sitting on that border? I'm not sure where they've got that from. And the other thing is that it's very tight just there. You're going to have construction traffic coming in. Presumably that will be restricted to times. You've got to have washing and cleaning facilities for wheels, etc., which is normally done at the area, at the beginning in a compound of some sort. Are you completely satisfied that all of that can be managed while allowing the neighbours around there to live together in harmony?
Yeah, so there is a construction management plan condition on there, our standard one, which would control hours of operation and where the site compound and all that kind of thing is, so we can ensure it's not too near to neighbouring properties. Highways also request that condition, so they've assessed whether the site can be served by construction traffic and they haven't raised any objections. So we don't have any concerns in relation to the construction of the site through that access.
Then may I ask, if we look to the... Oh, look, you've taken the slide down. That's better. May I ask, if we move to the other side of that, so we're going to the left of that, that's Tye Road, right?
Yes, this is Tye Road down the western boundary.
One of the speakers mentioned that earlier, about why they didn't link up in Tye Road as one of the possible ingress or exits. Is there any particular reason for that?
So if I can show you the site plans, you can see it slightly in this aerial image that the darker green is the existing trees. You've got a really good screening. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Sorry, the IT's not playing today. Right, so I was just going to take you to my site photos. As you can see here, there's very good quality vegetation along there. So highways obviously wouldn't be supportive of an access this close to the junction. So any access would have to be a lot further up Tye Road, where you'd lose a lot of existing vegetation, where there was previously a TPO there. I think there's around 11 oak trees and 1 holly tree, which weren't removed. The TPO was removed, but the trees are still there and are still a positive feature. It's also an important view in the neighbourhood plan because of the attractiveness of that view up Tye Road. So I think there would be issues with punching a vehicular access through there visually without any comments from highways on the level of traffic that Tye Road could take.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The thing that worries me so far at this stage was the speaker who spoke up about the sewage treatment. This worries me immensely. If it is causing sickness already without putting another 30 houses on it. I see at the top of page 28, Anglia Water has said it openly admits that it's got assets close to the site rather than connecting to the site. Therefore, if we were minded to accept this scheme, my question would be, can't we make the acceptance subject to a suitable connection on the Anglia Water Sewage Scheme? It does worry me from what they say there. I see the planning manager would like to come in.
In respect of this proposal, your job in this case is to consider its merits and its burden and the harm, if there is any. Ultimately, this proposal is looking at a main sewer connection, and that is the proposal before you. What other sites around this area have been connected up to is not before you.
Any further questions, members, for the officer? Councillor Land?
Is it possible just to ask about the Elmsted Neighbourhood Plan and the fact it's being sort of slightly overridden in this instance? I've read things, and as a parish councillor myself, I'm kind of always felt that offered a level of support, and but I'd just be interested from your point of view just to explain that, please.
Okay, this might take a moment. So, ultimately, the neighbourhood plan is part of your development plan. So the development plan is the consideration of all plans. That includes our local plan, that includes neighbourhood plan, that includes the county plans, and so on. All of those together form the development plan for which you need to take consideration of as a whole. The ultimately position here is that if you run through the settlement, so my mind keeps going back to what was mentioned earlier, which is the agent's interpretation of it. Can I just state for the record that ultimately what you have before you is the officer's interpretation of the neighbourhood plan, and that is what is being recommended for you. So let me put that forward to you. When it comes down to ELM1, which is the settlement boundaries policy, yes, this defines the settlement boundary, but it doesn't restrict development in its own right. It refers back to the development plan as a whole instead, and therefore we have to refer back to the local plan and everything else, and ultimately our other policies that restrict or don't restrict houses in the countryside. There is no clear policy within the local plan or any other plan that says nothing can be built here. Then we move on to ELMM2, which is protecting the setting of Elmsted Market. We do recognise in the recommendation before you that this is a valued landscape. Certainly that's what Part A of that policy talks about. We have considered this as part of the assessment, but again, this section of that particular policy does not specifically restrict housing development. It simply gives us a regard to, which we have, in our opinion, given regard to and explained to you why we have made the judgment we have made to recommend. B talks about the green landscape buffer. Again, that particular part of the development doesn't deny development. It can't, it doesn't say it can't be outside the settlement boundary. It is a judgment of whether or not it is detrimental or not, which is ultimately your decision and what you need to weigh up. In terms of access to enjoyment of the countryside is a location, that is where we are. It is a private, currently agricultural field, no access to it, legally at least. Does the housing change that access position? It does in part because you would be allowing a certain degree of public access. Would it diminish the physical or visual separation of the Tendring Colchester Borders Garden with Elmstead Market? Again, how does it diminish the physical or visual separation of the two? Is a judgment. It doesn't necessarily mean it can't be changed. It's just, how is it changed? Is it detrimental to the landscape setting to such a point that deserves a refusal? And that is, again, a judgment. And the other interesting thing with that particular part of that particular policy, it has an or in it. I love ors. Unfortunately, it gives you a choice. And the choice here is that you take one part or you take the other. And you're literally looking at harm to the landscape setting on its own, or you're looking at the visual separation of the development. So if you were to take it, if I was to argue at appeal, because unfortunately we have to be mindful of that because we get the lawyers involved at that point, when you get into or, you can simply be judging the landscape setting. And of course, in our opinion, we feel that landscape setting can be preserved or even possibly even enhanced. Lastly, does it protect, reinforce the identified positive features of the landscape in the green landscape buffer? That is, again, a judgment in terms of whether or not a proposal would increase landscaping or other characteristics that would enhance those positive features. So there is nothing within the Elmstead local plan policy, as we interpret it, that says no housing here. The question, and ultimately it's a question for most housing development, does this cause detrimental harm in planning terms that you feel is sufficient to refuse? And what are those harm? Or what is that harm?
Thank you, Mr. Pateman-G. Further questions? Councillor Alexandra?
At the risk of sounding repetitious, I'm still confused about this entrance. I don't see, from what I saw, of course you see what you sometimes see, you don't see all of it, because it's not there for you to look at, and it's only in the final works that you realise that there was more to the area than you first saw, if you understand what I'm trying to say. I don't understand how you're going to go from where we are now to extending it out to where it will be finished without encroaching on the land that is owned by the two neighbours either side. For one of them has already taped off that piece of land. I don't see where it's going to come from. And the pavement was literally sitting on that corner. You haven't got a slide of the actual entrance, have we?
Mr. Pateman-G.
Ultimately, we are reliant on the plan. If ultimately the applicant have got their plans wrong, that's their problem. If they can't implement it, they can't implement the permission. So I would hope they would have their ducks in a row as far as ownership and accurate plans are concerned, because if they don't, then they're going to have to just start again and put a new application in. So from our point of view, that risk is theirs. But as far as we can see on the plans, it is a standard width access point, and your outline is the point of access which is included for us to consider. If they've got that technical detail wrong in terms of they can't control the land that they have specified, then they're into trespass, which is a separate matter.
Well, thank you very much for that direction. Actually, I hadn't finished. So if I may, Chair, may I continue? Thank you very much indeed. Right, okay, so, right, this put me somewhat off my swing. What I'm trying to establish, we're looking at this as outline. It more than likely, when reserved matters, it will become clearer, because it's in that, go into that, a bigger sphere, so to speak. Will reserved matters come back to us here, or will they be handled? Because if we don't see the end of this reserved matters, what we do tonight and what decisions we make are final, and that's what's worrying me.
Mr. Pateman-G.
So I am smiling because unfortunately that has become a very complicated question. you may or may not recall, central government have issued a requirement in respect of national delegation requirements, and under those requirements, end of October onwards, these applications will, well, essentially your current delegation arrangements and any request for the return of applications, including reserved matters, may not occur. Now, there's still some legal working out in respect of the actual mechanisms that go in place of this, but essentially central government are looking to reduce what items come to planning committee. Now, so I cannot give you a guarantee. I can't simply say, as I have done in the past, this application will return for your deliberations, and make sure that is noted on the file, because I am not legally allowed to.
I'll just answer. Well, thank you very much indeed. That answered basically what I wanted to know, that the democratic right of the people is being diluted and with less knowledge. But hey-ho, that's the way it goes, doesn't it?
Councillor Sudra.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Alexandra, I am struggling with the access and the two roads. I don't see the common sense of a narrow road and then new laws allowing a wider road, and I see harm there. So I don't know. I don't think that I would approve of this.
Thank you, Councillor Sudra. Councillor Pateman-G, sorry, Mr. Pateman-G, sorry. Didn't see you waving at me there.
Sorry. Can I just sort of steer this slightly, and I don't mean to do this, but ultimately, if you have concerns about the access, what are the harm in respect of that access should be perhaps your focus. That in terms of what is the planning detriment that you are considering. Ultimately, we do have no highways objection at this time, so would be very sceptical of trying to work out a technical reason of harm when I do not have the expertise. They are the experts in that respect, and I would be going against them. What is the detriment in planning terms that you are perhaps looking at? If you are considering that this should be a different proposal and access elsewhere, that is not the proposal I have before me. So I, ultimately should be determining that, as in there might be something better elsewhere. It is not allowed to be considered that way.
Okay, so when I look at this, I see potentially, say, 2 cars per household, 60 cars going down that little narrow road. So I see harm there. Obviously, highways don't, but I don't see the common sense in it.
If I can help, are you trying to say to me that the road that this access would lead onto is not sufficient in width and therefore would cause harm to the amenity of the occupiers living in that estate, as opposed to it's not a highway safety matter, it's not a technical issue, it is a effect of amenity in that context?
Yes, so harm to the occupiers that are already there. I think it will cause a lot of difficulty.
I will just say that whilst we were there, when we went down to the site in the minibus, it was quite a narrow road. Although we were in a minibus, we weren't in a car. But I've just had a look myself on here, which Councillor Alexandra did point out. I think, Alison, that's the one that you had up on the screen, where it goes from the 4.8 metres to the proposed 6 metre wide shared surface street. But where we were on the run up to where we stood to view the site, that's quite tight there with any vehicles that are parked, which I should imagine, even with one car per household, 30 bungalows would certainly increase the traffic. But of course, as we've said many times, who are we to question Essex highways? So, yeah, as you said, Councillor Alexander, hey ho. But yes, it was. I thought it was a bit tight. Mr. Pateman G.
At the moment, Chair, I would rather see if the debate continues. At the moment, you have one possible concern in respect of amenity, in respect of the access and the resulting need to use the estate road. If that is only the issue before us, then I would like to come back. But if there are other issues, then I would rather the debate continued a little bit further.
Are there other issues, or would you just like Mr. Pateman G to look at that one? Councillor Land.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I would like to re-stress my question earlier in terms of the effort and the concern and the dedication that goes into producing a neighbourhood plan, and I understand the terminology around its interpretation and the judgment that is then put on that and how things can still be built outside of the policy, but I would like there to be more consideration towards adhering to that neighbourhood plan by not building on this field and outside of the settlement development boundary. I'll stop there.
Chair. I'm trying not to lead, and because it's not my role, but I'm faced at the moment with kind of two lines of conversation. One is that if access is the only issue, bear with me, then I would possibly recommend members consider a deferment for the officers to discuss that point with the applicant and consider if there is any other choices to be made around that. If there, however, is principal issues at play as well, then we would need to perhaps go further in respect of debate and how they are not how it does not comply, or would we not be compliant with the neighbourhood plan, and my colleagues may help me further with that as well.
Is that okay?
Councillor Land.
My obvious starting point then would be that this is outside of a defined settlement development boundary. That would be a strong starting point for me, as well as the other points that I've just muted around the fact that this village has tried to protect itself in ways which I also outlined as being admirable, credible, and a huge amount of dedication and work goes into that. And then to have the amount of representations as well, once again, that have come in relation to the concerns about the development, I feel there needs to be a level of weight attained to all of those points that I've just made, really.
Okay. Again, I'm trying not to lead the debate, so I am quite cautious here in respect of how I'm phrasing my language. And ultimately, I'm going to be a bit blunt here, and I might get a bit misquoted, but a neighbourhood plan isn't there to protect a location. Ultimately, the criteria for any neighbourhood plan, indeed the local plan, is not to restrict housing, but to ensure that housing is put in the appropriate locations. It is a case of perhaps your judgment needs to be around what is an appropriate location and why this site is not.
Thank you, Mr. Pateman-G. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chairman. The planning manager really gave me an answer when I was worried about the problems that would be created, we think, by the rather limited way of getting sewage off this site. Now, I accept his point. It really isn't our responsibility, and that if the developer were to develop a suitable system, that's where his responsibility stops. But surely it is also our responsibility to see what happens to the adjacent site that the sewer is going to be fed from. And therefore, just to say, well, it will be acceptable on the site and forget what happens to it when it blocks up down the road, is very difficult for me to understand. If there is a system that is causing problem now, why should we recommend that we should put another 30 houses on it? And this is a problem that we have from time to time, where Anglia Water say that there isn't a problem, they can go ahead and attach it. But from what we've heard, there will be a problem. And so I would like to think that this is another thing that we could add to our list of objections to put on the site. And I'd ask that the planning manager could come up with a set of words that would express that point of view. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Pateman-G.
On that, I can only say a couple of things, which is we have no evidence before us in respect of the consultees that we've been given. I understand that this other system is a private treatment plant. It is not what is before us in terms of this application on its own merits, which would be to directly connect to the sewer. And on that basis, they are completely separate matters and not affecting each other. We are not experts in sewage and drainage ultimately. We are reliant on other people, but it is not a valid reason for refusal because it is not in respect of the burden of this development.
Thank you, Mr. Pateman-G. If there are no further questions, we will now go into debate. Councillor Alexander.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Coming here tonight and listening to the local ward members and the speakers who spoke at the time, I was under the understanding that there was a big dissent in this being built. But it would appear to me that, and I'm still maintaining this, in order for you to go from that to 6 meters, you would have to use some of the land either side of that gate because there was not enough room. Now, the funny thing about this, Chair, is that the very person who has these answers are sitting in this room. And of course, our rules say we can't debate it any further, which is really, in a way, a great shame, because I'm sure she'd be more than happy to fill this in. So you can see this is worrying me. That being the case, there would have to be a relinquish of some land either side, which means that not all the residents are against it. The other thing, I don't know if any of the other councillors noticed, but one of these green delivery lorries come in from Waitrose or some company, and it came in and turned round, and a car had to stop to get past this, waited for the lorry to make its little bit of a manoeuvre, and then basically hit the pavement to go past it. That's how narrow that part is just there. I'm sure it can all be worked out, but we're not getting, once again, the answers to the questions. Where are you going to find 4 metres of land? So that's where we are now. At this moment in time, Chair, I have nothing to offer you in the way of a proposal.
Alison?
Could I just clarify on the land ownership at the point of the access? You can see the red line kinks out here. So this little kink is within the applicant's ownership and control. And that's, if I go back to the photographs, you can see it's this little section here. So it's not neighbouring land, it's where the footpath stops and currently turns around at the end there. And you can see it. Let me show my pointer.
Chair, no
Sorry,
disrespect. That's not what I saw on the site visit. I saw the wooden gate, and then literally there was a stick with some tape on it, indicating that this was obviously someone's private land. And where that finished, that garden stood. Maybe they didn't own that bit, and that will be taken back. But I am curious, you do need space to get in and out, and that is tight there.
Councillor Land.
Yeah, I would stress that that picture just emphasises the point that's trying to be made here by colleagues, in as much as that is a potential parked car. I think you can see the front of it in the top right-hand corner and the rest of it in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can see the narrowness of that entry point there, which is not, that's not going to change. What they build past the gate, fine, that may well be wider, but that is what people have to suffer right now. And if you had another situation whereby another car might be parked the other side a bit further back, or on the other side a bit further back, you may have an ambulance or a fire engine needing to get in, and it may well be quite tricky. So I would reaffirm my colleague's point here as well about this issue around the access. It's very narrow going through there.
Mr. Pateman-G.
I think it's going to be the first time I've ever done this, but I get the point over the access and the narrow road of the existing estate. Ultimately, you have given me that as an issue. My suggestion to you as to members is that if that is ultimately the point that we need to go find further information about, we can defer this item on that basis and look at that and come back. That's within your remit. But I'm conscious that what I don't want to do is go away and only look at that matter, then come back, and it's actually the principle of development as a whole, the impact of the development on the landscape buffer, or any other reasonings. Well, of course, you can debate it again next time. Of course, you are well within your right to do that. But I'm just conscious that I would, if I'm going to go away and look at grabbing further information, there isn't anything else I should be looking at the same time. I don't know if my colleague wants to come in. He's looking like he does.
Mrs. Fisher, and then Councillor Alexander, I'll come to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clear just something up about land ownership. So when applicants make applications for planning permission, they have to declare whether or not they own all of the land within the red line site, or they don't. And if they don't, then they have to give notifications. It's a statutory requirement. You have to give notification to other landowners that you're applying for planning permission. And we've just checked the planning application form, and there is something, it's called a certificate B, has been completed, which suggests that some of the land is not in the applicant's ownership. So we don't have any more information than that I can give you, but and I can't specify which parts of the land are not in their ownership. But if you just bear with me. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's something we can check if that's something that you want us to do. But as I say, notification has to be given to non-owners, other owners who are not the applicant. Essex County is one of them that has been notified. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Councillor Alexander?
Okay. I'd like to sum it up, if I may. I don't want to keep everyone waiting, but obviously we came here tonight and this agenda item was an outline and we were to consider the access. And in fairness, very unusually actually, we've done nothing else but consider the access, because I think everyone sitting here and yourselves maybe agree that it's tight and we're looking at it, and of course we just don't know the answers. Is there any room, Chair, for a deferment to get more information so we can at last sit down together as a committee and a team, and we get together and we make a positive? Because if we can't guarantee it's going to come back to us at Reserved Matters, then we've got to get it right here, because that's why you're here, for us to make that decision. And I don't want it to come back on to the committee that we made an incorrect decision.
That's what I was doing. Thanks. That's just gone to bed. Okay. Leave it alone. Right. So at the moment you are asking the question of, to clarify ownership, to clarify the width available to the site. You're asking for the applicant to consider your concern in respect of the amenity of the existing occupiers of the estate, in respect of the amenity of using that roadway through. Are you effectively asking, or are you suggesting, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I'm trying to get ahead of it here, ultimately, is that your proposal for deferment on that basis that you are looking to consider? Is that essentially where we are?
Yes, basically, for example, there's a 2-metre footpath there. Where does that fall in with? Can you see that it was very confusing when we were there, because we didn't see it in the way we're looking at it now?
So essentially a clearer path in that respect of the access point, a clearer plan in respect of the access point as well, on top of those other issues mentioned. So if I can summarise what your concerns are here, that you may wish to consider for deferment, if that's where you're heading. So your considerations at this moment in time for possible deferment, if that's what you're thinking about, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but that's where you need to take that further, is that a clarification of ownership, an understanding of what happens to the footpath in that locality, a clearer plan, because ultimately the scale is quite high, so a clearer scale plan of the access point to understand exactly what would occur, and consideration further consideration for the applicant to consider the amenity of the locality.
Yeah, thank you very much. And looking at the split, you had 4 pictures on that. One of them was a long drive down into that. I'm sorry, I can't see at the end of that. There we are. I mean, that is not doing anything for me. All I can see is right up the end. But it was just something that Councillor Land mentioned. The fact is, if somebody's parked there, then what happens? Now, this is what it is. And all right, we'll pop some lines down. But again, who polices these kind of things? Because I see it all the time. So it's just clarification. If we're going to have this, we're going to make this decision, Chair, we've got to get it right, because we affect the futures of people in years to come. And if we're going to do that with no recourse for reserved matters, then why don't we just, for once, just get it right?
So, Councillor Alexander, could you just confirm, is that your proposal?
Yes,
Yes.
I propose that we...
As per the wording that was just given to us by our planning manager.
Yeah. And the
Yes.
further wording which has been created and directed by Mr. Pateman G in such an elegant manner.
Right, okay. So do you have a seconder for your proposal? Oh, Councillor Goldman,
Yeah, I'd quite happily second that.
to defer this
To defer,
application
yeah.
as per the wording kindly given to us by our planning manager.
Yeah.
Okay. In that case then, we shall go to the vote to defer this application as per the words given to us by our planning manager. Proposed by Councillor Alexander, and seconded by Councillor Goldman. So could I have a show of hands, please? So that is unanimous to defer that application. So we'll now have another short break, and we'll be back in about 10 minutes. Welcome back, everybody, to part 3, Tendring District Council Planning Committee. And before we go any further, members of the committee will know that we have the 3-hour rule, which we will be getting to the 3 hours at 8 o'clock. So if we are still here in session at 8 o'clock, do we continue? Yes. Do I have your agreement that we continue? Right, okay. Thank you very much. So the next application on the agenda is item 7, which is A3260085, sorry, 000854, the existing Mugger multi-use games area within Crossways Recreation Ground, Crossways Jaywick. And to present this item for us this evening, our Planning Officer, Alison Pope. Over to you, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair and members. This application, as the Chair has just confirmed, relates to Crossways Recreation Ground in Jaywick and seeks planning permission for the construction of a floodlit football foundation play zone to replace the existing multi-use games area. The application is before Planning Committee as the Crossways Recreation Ground is council owned. The application site is located within Crossways Recreation Ground, which is designated as safeguarded open space in the local plan and lies within the Jaywick and West Clacton settlement development boundary. The site is also situated within flood zones 2 and 3 and is crossed by public footpath 16. This is an aerial view of the recreation ground. These are the views of the existing games area and the area of the proposed play zone. The existing games area is hard-surfaced facility with relatively low perimeter fencing, and it's approaching the end of its useful life. The proposal seeks to replace this facility with a modern football foundation play zone that would provide improved sports and recreation opportunities for the local community. These are views looking south from the northern end of the recreation ground. The proposed play zone would be larger than the existing games area and enclosed by 3-metre high green fencing, with a 4-metre high goal recess section at each end. The development would also include a spectator area, 2 benches, 2 bins, equipment storage, bollard lighting from the north pedestrian route from Crossways, and 4 8-metre high LED floodlights positioned at the corners of the play zone. The surface will have markings for recreational football and basketball. The play zone would operate between 9 AM and 9 PM 7 days a week through a mixture of bookable sessions and open access periods, ensuring that the wider community can continue to use the facility whilst also allowing organised groups to make bookings. Signage will be available next to the entrance gate with a link to the online booking system. This shows the proposed layout of the multi-use games area and the play zone here, and these are the proposed elevations. In terms of the principle of development, the proposal is considered positive as it provides an improved sports facility within an existing recreation area. There would be no loss of open space, and the development would improve the quality and accessibility of sports provision available to the local community. Looking at the design and appearance, the new play zone would be larger than the existing games area, and the fencing would be higher, meaning it would be more noticeable within the recreation ground. However, it would sit within an established recreational setting where sporting facilities already exist, and there is not considered to be any significant visual impact. The Council's Tree and Landscape Officer has no objections and welcomes the planting of 9 new rowan trees, which will help enhance the appearance of the wider site. With regards to highways, Essex Highways raised no objection to the proposal. The development replaces an existing facility and is not expected to substantially increase or create severe parking problems on surrounding roads. Conditions are recommended to protect the adjacent public footpath during construction and operation of the facility. The site is located within flood zones 2 and 3. A flood risk assessment has been submitted and reviewed. The proposed use is classified as water compatible development and is considered appropriate in this location. The proposed surface will be porous and surface water will drain appropriately from the site. Officers are therefore satisfied that the proposal is acceptable in flood risk terms. Environmental matters, such as noise and lighting, have been reviewed by the Council's Environmental Protection Team. They raise no objection following review of the submitted lighting assessment. Officers are satisfied that the flood lighting would not cause unacceptable impacts to nearby residential properties. The facility would also be restricted to operating between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. through a planning condition. The lighting is activated automatically and synchronised with the play zone booking. The floodlights are on only for the duration of the scheduled session. Ecology has also been considered, and Place Services Ecology raises no objections subject to conditions. Biodiversity enhancements, including the planting of 9 new trees, will be secured as part of the development. Overall, officers consider that the proposal will provide a significant improvement to the existing sports facilities at Crossways Recreation Ground without causing unacceptable impacts on neighbouring residents, highway safety, flood risk or ecology. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in your report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. There are no speakers on this item, so we will now go straight to questions for the officer. Councillor Alexander.
Just a couple of questions, really, if I may. No, there will be none of the old left, will there? Everything will be renewed. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes. The old multi-use games area will be completely removed and this will take its place.
And the new one is going to be somewhat larger in footprint than the other one, because the other one was a little bit small. That was a complaint. I want something bigger your kids are like. Is that right?
That's right. It is a bigger facility, yes.
The only thing I'm a little confused by, and it's that the play zone will be available from 9 to 2100 hours, Monday to Sunday, and then it goes. The booking system will be comprised of a. What am I reading now? What does all that mean?
So Tendring District Council, because it is on land owned by them, will manage the facility, and so there will be details on the fencing which will enable people to book the facility for private use or group bookings, football teams, football groups, sports groups to use the facility, not necessarily for football, but for gatherings to use the facilities. And they are able to do that through the booking system. There is also a system whereby the facility will be open, and so, as is the case at the moment with the multi-use games area, anybody can go and use it at any time.
One last question. So, I like this. By booking this, then it removes the bigger lads and girls coming down and pushing the little ones out, so to effect. So, how will they book? How will that booking take place? Is it on your phone, telephone? How does that work?
I believe there will be a link, a website link on the information that is going to be next to the gate, so that you can go online and book it. There may well be a telephone number as well and a QR code. I'm not familiar with the exact details that will be available, but something like that.
And there's a pin lock, is there? Somehow you're given a code and it works. Is that correct? I presume that gets changed regularly, otherwise you can see what's going to happen there.
As I understand, the codes are unique to each booking, yes. So when you book, you are given a unique code and the gate will open according to that.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. Councillor Land? No? Yes? Yes.
I'm fully supportive of such a facility. I'm further reassured by the fact that you mentioned that the lights actually go off when the booking ends. That was not how I perceived it would happen. I thought it might lights on at 6, lights out at 9. That's even better. Great technology. only thing that I could think of was the fact there was a couple of people that were concerned, but with the modern day slanting of the lights, and that would be my only question, would just be those lights have to be pretty perfect. They don't. We have a facility somewhere else where I am involved, and just the slight tilt of that light can send a beam backwards or forwards, and I'm sure that will all be adequately put in place, and I would be fully supportive of this and move approval if you need one, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Land. Just one quick question from me on this. We've had a couple of these already come to committee, and this one, I know it's not in the same place, obviously, same location. It looks pretty much the same. Are they all pretty much the same, or slightly different?
It is a standard model that they're using, yes, and construction.
Yeah, going to say it looks like it. Yeah, it's just obviously a different location. And Councillor Land, you're absolutely right about those lights. If they're angled in the wrong way, they are very annoying. So I'm definitely going to support this application. So over to you, members, for any comments. Councillor Wiggins.
Sorry, I'm happy to second it as well.
Okay, so any further comments?
Sorry, Chair, I missed what was just been said.
Councillor Wiggins has seconded Councillor Land's proposal. Yes, to accept this application as per the conditions in our papers. So if there's nothing else, then we shall go to the vote to approve this application. So if I could have a show of hands, please, members. So that application is approved, and that is unanimous. Thank you, members. And the final application on our list this evening is 26/00388/FUL, Low Road Cafe, Lower Marine Parade, Dovercourt. And to present this item for us this evening, our officer, Mr. Matthew Lang. Over to you, Matt.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So as you said, this application relates to the Low Road Cafe on Lower Marine Parade and Dovercourt. The application's for the redevelopment of the site to redevelop the cafe, provide additional storage, a new paddle court at the rear, and landscape and other works. The application is before you as the tenant is the applicant, but the landowner is the Tenant District Council. So here's the application site. As I said, it's on the seafront at Dovercourt. The area is mixed in character. There's residential properties to the north. To the southwest, there's an existing social club and skating rink. To the northeast are public toilets and amusements, and to the southeast is the promenade. So there's the aerial image. You can see the existing cafe on the site there. There's an existing go-kart track for children. The proposal is to demolish those and rebuild. Some images of the existing cafe there. Constructed approximately in the 1950s. It's got an area of grass to the front with a small privet hedgerow to the front of that. View northeast towards the public toilets. And that's a view at the back of the site which leads on to a new residential property. It's an area of grass with palisade fencing and some areas of patches of vegetation. Existing site layout, so you can see the existing cafe set approximately 50 metres back from the highway. And that's the proposed site layout. So the cafe will come slightly closer to the highway. There'll be an area to the front with a retractable awning where there'll be some outside seating. At the back there you can see the paddle court will be located at the rear with extra planting and acoustic fencing wrapping around that element. There'll also be a public footpath, or not public footpath, pedestrian footpath linking through to a footpath at the rear. So that's a bit of a close-up in terms of the floor area of the development. So approximately 10 tables and chairs internally. There'll be a kitchen area. There'll also be a kiosk at one end to serve ice creams and various other snacks. In terms of the proposal, the existing CAF is 133 metres squared. The new CAF is 186 metres square, so it's roughly 50 square metres increase in size. The cafe will be open from 8 AM to 5 PM. and the paddle court, which can run independently from the cafe, will again be 8 AM to 8 PM. So that's the design of the new cafe. It's a contemporary in appearance, areas of metal cladding, areas of timber cladding, areas of tension steel rods at the front, which will give an architectural nod to the nearby lighthouses. Then at the rear, you've got the glass enclosure of the paddle court. Paddle court will be approximately 4 metres in height, and the cafe itself just under 4 metres, so slightly lower than the existing cafe on the site. So that's the rear and the sides. You can see the acoustic fencing there at the back, which will be 3 metres in height. That protects the residents' amenity to the north in terms of noise. And you can see there the retractable awning, which provide seating in poor weather. And there's some 3D views of the new structure in place. So you can see that bottom left hand there, you can see the acoustic fence that wraps around the open-aired paddle court. And there's some further images there of how it will fit within the site. So in conclusion, the proposal seeks to redevelop an existing and long-established seafront cafe site within the Dovercourt settlement boundary, replaces a 1950s building with a modern high-quality facility, and introduces a new paddle court to diversify the leisure offer. The scheme would enhance the appearance of the site, support the local tourism economy, and provide improved recreational opportunities. All technical matters have been assessed. Highways, Environment Agency, Environmental Protection and Place Services Ecology raised no objections subject to conditions. Noise impacts from the paddle court considered to be acceptable with the installation of the 3 metre high acoustic fencing, which would reduce noise impacts from the court below the current average background noise levels at the nearest residential properties to the north. And although the site is located in a flood zone 3, the finished floor levels of the cafe will be set higher than existing, and the new building will incorporate flood resilient measures as well, resulting in betterment over the current flood risk relating to the cafe building that's there at present. Moreover, the drainage, ecology and BMG requirements and landscaping matters can all be satisfactorily addressed through planning conditions, and therefore officers conclude the benefits of the proposal outweigh any limited impacts identified. Development accords with the development plan and the National Planning Policy Framework, and accordingly the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out at 9.1 of the committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. There are no speakers on this item. Therefore, we'll go straight to questions for the officer. Colleagues. Councillor Land.
Just a little bit for my interest. So we own the land. The person that holds the lease is presenting this opportunity for this piece of land.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, we own the land.
Seems a silly question.
No, we own the land and the applicant is the current tenant. So planning permission is one aspect, one stage of the permission. There'll be another discussion with our assets team in terms of the agreements going forward to construct the development.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Chair. Over the years, took my kids there, and you can imagine how long ago that was, and they're all grown up, families of their own now. And it hasn't changed a bit, really. And this is so exciting. I like the look of it. And we have to move all the time. We can't just stagnate in one place. So, as indeed social interaction changes, so we have to put the buildings to do that. And this paddle, I think it's called paddle ball or something, whatever, that sounds exciting. I'd love to have a go at that myself. When you're ready to take a proposal, I'd like to propose this for approval.
Thank you very much, Councillor Alexander. Yes, I from the age of 10, I was on the seafront with a roller skating rink down there and various other things, so I know that area quite well. Yes, that, I don't know, that was it 1970s, the 1950s, the cafe, I think, yeah. Yes, I have to say I'm certainly in support of this application, so I might even second your proposal.
That'd be nice.
Any further comments? No? Councillor Land?
Yep, I was very impressed with what I saw and am seeing. I mean, I prefer saddleboard, but not everyone's got a horse. There you go. It's my joke for the day.
Thank you, Councillor Land. So if there are no further comments on this one, then we have a proposal from Councillor Alexander to approve this application as per the conditions in our papers. And as I said, I'll be happy to second Councillor Alexander's proposal to approve this application. So may I have a show of hands, please, members? So that application is approved, it's unanimous. And that just leaves me to thank you all very much for your attendance this evening and your patience. And the date of the next planning meeting will be on Tuesday the 4th of August. Tuesday the 4th of August.